Hi folks, I know it's been a while since we've done something like this. We have a pre-recorded interview coming up with Arthur from Aquatropics. We've got a pretty hot thing going on here in Florida, and if you're not aware of, this is something that actually happens quite a bit in the nation, and historically something that affects the pet industry as a whole. So Arthur, I know you're very close with the Fish and Wildlife Tag Team. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that and what's going on with the blacklist and the whitelist.
Yeah, so it's been a hot topic for debate for a little while now, but it's really starting to come down to a point where everybody needs to be aware and more involved with our future here for keeping pets in the state of Florida. We have a great group on this tag committee that basically represent different parts of industry and some other parts of aquaculture and marine collectors and everything combined. And we're basically working with Fish and Wildlife Commission about risk assessment and things for possible invasive species, anything regarding more exotic captive wildlife. And really, one of the biggest things going on right now is the possible threat of not being able to keep so many of the animals that we have here in Florida, even with low risk to the environment. So that's where we're focused right now.
Absolutely. So if you're not familiar with the blacklist versus the whitelist, we're going to go inside and take a look at some of the animals and explain a little bit about what that means and how it's going to affect your animals and what you can keep in your aquariums. So Arthur, let's go on inside the store and see what's going on.
Perfect.
All right, we chose this tank in your store for quite a good reason. You have some amazing animals in here. And when you're in a store and you get inspired, you see these awesome animals, you may not realize that they might need a monster tank. Monster fish needs monster tank. This can lead to some challenges as they grow, what to do with them if you find yourself where you cannot take care of them. Arthur, tell me a little bit about what you and the industry can do to help people understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this tank's for a specific reason. We have a couple fish in here that are known in the monster fish keeping world as kind of a staple. We've got red hook silver dollars, we've got a big Florida gar, we've got our big, fire eel and a big silver arowana. These aren't predatory fish that do get significant size, but in the industry, you do see them in a lot of stores as a little 2-inch, 3-inch baby and don't always realize that they can get quite large. It doesn't happen overnight. This is something that usually happens over years to get an arowana to this size. This fish here actually came from a friend of mine who had him for 12 years before coming to Aquatropics, and now he's been here for a couple of years. But leading into that, what we do here is we do sell these fish as babies, understanding that they have much more capacity in the future for space that they need. And what we do is we tell people, quite honestly, you might buy a 2-inch Oscar right now, know that it can get quite large years down the path, but you can always bring them into a store like here. We take them back. We incentivize people bringing them in so that we can make sure we get them to a larger home if the person's not able to provide it themselves. And we know that before they go home, they're aware that these species are not something that's going to stay in a little 10-gallon, 20-gallon tank. So we have a moral obligation to tell people, hey, know that this is going to get much larger, but I don't want you to be afraid of it because there's always an option to where these animals can go, and it's not frowned upon to bring them back to a store and let them go to a bigger home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm great you touched on the education piece, part of that, because I believe that's really important when you're looking at animals. And this is a huge part of people not releasing their animals out into the wild.
Absolutely. Something
we work very closely with Fish and Wildlife, Habitatitude, all those organizations and law enforcement to keep our waterways safe, to make sure we don't have animals in there that are not native to Florida, and to keep our aquarium industry as it is.
Absolutely, yeah. We don't want invasive species. No one does. I think industry, state, we really have a good long-standing relationship with Fish and Wildlife Commission. Our local officers, some are both customers, or people that just happen to walk through and enjoy the store and know that we not only follow the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law, and that we actually work with them to make sure if they have somebody that maybe reached out to them about a situation where they can't house something, we can help in any way, shape, or form. And we have done that many times in this area. And 3 stores here in Florida, I've got a relationship at all 3 stores with local law enforcement the same way I do here in Utah.
Absolutely, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's important. I think a lot of people are so afraid of Fish and Wildlife, but not every officer is the one example they might have in a negative outlook. my officer here in Gainesville, I won't put on camera here so I don't embarrass him, but you know, he's fantastic to work with. I have a cell phone he lets me call him if I have any questions whatsoever, and we've been great. But you know, hopefully we can continue that relationship moving forward, because the industry is scared with everything coming down the pipeline with this whitelist and blacklist, and you know, I don't want to go up in arms right away, because I don't think that's the path to take. I think there's always a middle ground, but hopefully we can keep that relationship going.
And I think you touched on a very important subject there. Working in partnership with the law enforcement, you know, working in partnership as a wholesaler, supply chain, all the listings that need to happen for these animals to remain in the industry, and to have a well thought out law that protects both the wild as well as our animals in the industry.
Yeah, and I mean, I talk to a lot of store owners, I talk to a lot of breeders, a lot of wholesalers, distributors. You know, I'm big friends with Seegers Farms. And, you know, I think we're all on the same page. Industry is okay with regulation, but we're not okay with a brick wall to just say you can't have anything because I said so. So, you know, risk assessment, actually putting proof in the pudding and showing us that there's something that might be a true risk to the environment, I think we're going to be in more support than they even realize. But we're also not going to stand by and just let them say we're taking this away because we want to.
Absolutely. So we're all about working together between hobbyists, wholesalers, suppliers, stores, and bringing this whole thing to fruition and educating. How can we work together?
Yep.
How can we build a better future for not just Florida, the aquarium industry, and nationwide? Because this is a law that will continue to pass through many states.
Yep.
We need to be aware of it.
Yeah, this is really important. This is kind of ground zero, so to speak. I think a lot of states tend to follow Florida's lead. And you know, Michigan is a great example of an opportunity to work together. Years ago, they had the same situation where they, you know, were worried about cold tolerant species up in the lakes and waterways up there, and took a couple of years, but they were able to work together, come up with a list, and say, hey, these are something we're concerned about. The industry said no problem, and actually helped them and educated them as much as possible to come with a good compromise.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, because now that's become a great partnership between the stores in Michigan as well as the law enforcement.
Yep.
And now they work together as we bring new animals in, the risk assessment for, is it going to be invasive? Is it going to be a challenge to rehome? What's going to happen to this animal in the future of the waterways? And that's become a beautiful partnership.
Yep, and hopefully we can follow the same thing here in Florida.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you, Arthur. And you can find more information on the social media channels for Seegers Inc., Seegers Farms, certainly Aquatropics, as well as many other stores that are taking participation in these tag events, as well as other laws that do come out against the aquarium industry and other things to do with your pets. So follow that closely, such as PAN. They also put out alerts. You can read those alerts. They often have templates you can change into your commissioners that really basically sums it all up. You sign it and say, I do not agree with this law. We stand against this. How can we work together to bring in a better law?
Yeah, and just be as vocal as you possibly can, and just let people know that you work with these animals, care for them, love them, and think we should be able to do that for the future. All I ask is just know that, you know, keep it civil. We don't want to go a route that's ever too aggressive and demeaning to anybody. At the end of the day, people treating people is all we can do. But we got to keep the fight going.
All right, you gotcha. Well, stay close to our channels. We'll keep you in touch and keep on going.
Thanks, Shelby.